Right now, somewhere in the world, a soldier is standing guard. He does not know your name. You do not know his. And yet, if every nation on Earth turned against every other nation at once, his decisions and yours would collide in ways neither of you could predict. That sounds like fiction. It is not. Scientists have actually modeled this, and the answer is far stranger than a movie battle scene. You picture tanks, you picture explosions, but the real collapse would not start on a battlefield. It would start inside a human skull. Your brain was not built for a world of 8 billion strangers. For most of the time your species has existed, you lived in groups of about 150 people. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar found this number again and again across tribes, villages, even modern military units. 150 is roughly the limit of people your mind can hold as real three-dimensional individuals. Everyone past that number becomes a category, a flag, a uniform, a them. That single fact is the hidden engine behind every large war in history, because once a person becomes a category, something changes in the brain. Empathy narrows, suspicion widens, and an ordinary person becomes capable of things they would never do to a neighbor. You have seen this proven in a lab. In the 1960s, the psychologist Stanley Milgram asked ordinary volunteers to deliver what they believed were painful electric shocks to a stranger, simply because a man in a white coat told them to continue. Most of them did, not because they were cruel, because obedience to authority runs deeper in you than most people want to admit. Now, stretch that instinct across every government on the planet, all reacting at once. What actually happens? First, the world would fracture into clusters, not one single fight. Alliances would matter more than borders. Some nations would activate treaties instantly, others would hesitate, waiting to see who moves first. That hesitation itself would be dangerous, because in global conflict theory, waiting can look like weakness, and weakness invites the first strike. Within hours, the internet would become a battlefield of its own. Financial systems would seize, stock markets would close before they could crash any further. Power grids, which are more fragile than people assume, would become prime targets because a blackout can cripple a country faster than a bomb. Here is the part almost nobody expects. The deadliest weapons would likely never be used. Not because of mercy, because of math. During the Cold War, the astronomer Carl Sagan worked with a team of scientists to model what would happen if a fraction of the world's nuclear arsenals were ever launched. Their conclusion became famous: nuclear winter. Enough soot and smoke thrown into the atmosphere to block sunlight for years. Crops failing on every continent, including the one that fired first. In other words, total war would not have winners. It would only have survivors, and not for long. This is called mutually assured destruction, and it is strangely one of the reasons full-scale war between major powers has not happened in 80 years. The fear itself became the safeguard. So if the biggest weapon stays silent, what does a world war of this scale actually look like? Mostly it looks like exhaustion. Supply chains break first. Most countries do not produce their own food, fuel, or medicine anymore. They import it. Cut that off, and shelves empty in days, not weeks. Historians studying the Second World War found that rationing, not gunfire, was what most civilians actually experienced day to day. Global conflict at this scale would multiply that effect 100-fold, hitting nations that have never rationed anything in their history. Something else would happen inside people, and this is the part your brain does not expect. Fear does not just make people aggressive, it also makes them desperate for belonging. The neuroendocrinologist Robert Sapolsky has spent decades studying stress hormones like cortisol and what chronic threat does to decision-making. Under prolonged danger, the brain shifts resources away from long-term reasoning and towards short-term survival. People stop asking, is this the right choice? They start asking, is this the safe choice? Populations under that kind of pressure become easier to direct, easier to unify, and easier to turn against an outside enemy, which is exactly why history's most controlling regimes have always found or invented a threat the moment their grip started to slip. Do you see the loop forming? Fear shrinks empathy. Shrunken empathy justifies harm. Harm creates more fear, and the cycle needs no villain twirling a mustache. It only needs ordinary brains, doing what ordinary brains have always done. But here's the twist almost no one expects, the one that would surprise even a general. Total global war does not resemble one massive war. It resembles thousands of small, local ones running in parallel, most with no idea what the others are doing. Communication systems fail early. Command structures fragment. Soldiers on distant fronts sometimes keep fighting wars that their own governments have already tried to end, simply because the message never reached them. This actually happened in the Pacific after the Second World War, when isolated units kept fighting for years, unaware the war was over. Multiply that isolation across 100 nations at once, and you get chaos with no single author, a storm no one is steering. And through all of it, one thing remains completely unmoved. Geography does not fight. Rivers do not choose sides. Mountains do not carry flags. When the noise finally stops, the physical world is still there, indifferent to who claimed victory because it was never actually listening. So what would be left once the exhaustion set in and the smoke cleared? Probably not ruins as dramatic as fiction promises. Probably something quieter and in some ways more unsettling. damaged trust, broken supply lines slowly rebuilding, borders redrawn not by conquest, but by which systems survived intact, and an entire generation raised on a memory of just how fast the ordinary world can come apart. This is the part that should stay with you, not the explosions, not the maps, the fragility. Every current in your daily life, the electricity, the groceries, the internet, the quiet assumption that tomorrow will look like today, depends on cooperation between millions of strangers you will never meet. Global conflict on this scale is not really a story about weapons. It is a story about what happens the instant that invisible cooperation breaks. You do not think about this cooperation because it is working. That is the strange privilege of peace. It disguises itself as boredom. Right now, somewhere in the world, a soldier is standing guard. He does not know your name, you do not know his, and the quiet, ordinary fact that neither of you has any reason to fight the other is not an accident. It is the fragile, invisible agreement holding your entire world together.